In early 1848, California sat at the far edge of the United States, newly taken and still thinly settled. For most Americans, it meant little more than distant maps, scattered farms, and old missions left from an earlier era. The region felt like an ending, not a beginning. Few people expected it to matter much to the nation's future. Then, in the interior valleys, one small work site changed the meaning of the place. That work site belonged to John Sutter, a landholder trying to build a sawmill that could supply lumber to a growing settlement. He sent a carpenter, James W. Marshall, to help get it running along the American River. The job sounded ordinary: cut timber, shape boards, keep the water moving. But during the work, Marshall noticed something in the streambed that did not fit with rock and sand. He had found gold. At first, the discovery stayed close to the mill, treated like something dangerous to speak about. Sutter needed workers, not stampedes, and a rush could wreck everything he had built. So the men tested what they had and tried to keep control of the information. But gold did not behave like a local secret. Every person who heard even a hint had a reason to repeat it. The frontier's quiet balance started to crack. The secret did not stay local for long. In the Sacramento Valley, the rumor moved the way practical news always moved, from one worker to the next, from one ranch to another, carried by travelers who could not resist repeating it. Each retelling made it bigger and easier to believe. And once people believed, they acted. A handful left first, then more followed. Normal life started to thin out at the edges. In San Francisco Bay, the change hit like a switch. Sailors stepped off ships and did not come back. Crews broke apart overnight because one man leaving meant the rest could not sail. Captains watched vessels sit useless at anchor, not from storms or war, but from desertion. On land, the same pattern spread. Wages and steady work suddenly felt pointless. Gold promised a shortcut, and routine lost its hold. Farms and workshops started running short of hands just when they needed them most. Harvests waited. Cattle went untended. Small businesses closed for days, then for good, because owners also headed for the rivers. Towns did not just grow quieter, they broke their rhythm. The rush did not require orders from any government. It happened person by person, decision by decision, until the whole region reorganized around one question: who was going to the gold? By late 1848, the gold story stopped being a California whisper and started becoming national news. Letters and small reports had drifted east for months, but many people still doubted them. The country had heard exaggerations from frontiers before. What changed was reach. Newspapers picked up the claims, repeated them, and pushed them from port cities to inland towns. The rumor entered the American conversation, and it did not leave. Then, the federal government put its weight on the scale. President James K. Polk, the man in the White House, delivered a formal message to Congress that confirmed gold really had been found in California. He did not speak like a gambler or a promoter. He spoke like an authority. That difference mattered. An uncertain tale became an official fact. For thousands of listeners and readers, doubt collapsed in a single moment. Once Polk's confirmation hit the newspapers, the news traveled faster than any miner could. Editors printed details, reprinted them again, and other papers copied the same lines across the country and overseas. The message changed its meaning as it moved. It was no longer about a few lucky men on a riverbank. It sounded like a chance available to anyone bold enough to go. And that idea triggered movement, plans, bookings, departures. In 1849, the rush stopped being a rumor people chased and became a human flood. Men and women poured toward California from every direction, and they came fast. Some arrived by ship, gambling on long sea routes around South America or across the tropics. Others pushed overland in wagon trains, fighting distance, weather, and disease. In just months, the population jumped, and every landing and trailhead fed the same urgent movement inland. The moment they reached the gold country, small camps no longer stayed small. A patch of tents turned into a town before anyone could plan it. Food, tools, and shelter became as valuable as gold because there were never enough of any of them. Prices spiked, wages jumped, and nothing felt stable for long. A place that had been quiet a year earlier now ran on speed, scarcity, and constant turnover as newcomers kept arriving. What formed in California was not a single community, but a migrant society, thrown together in real time. People arrived from dozens of countries and spoke different languages, followed different customs, and carried different expectations of fairness. They traded and worked side by side when it helped them survive, then fought hard when the same ground promised a fortune. Cooperation happened, but so did suspicion. In 1849, the goldfields became a meeting point where the world competed in one place. By 1849, goldfields filled fast, and the real fight shifted from finding gold to keeping it. A patch of riverbank or a bend in a creek became a prize, and strangers arrived every day to test who owned what. Formal courts rarely reached these camps in time, so miners built their own system. They marked boundaries, set limits on claim size, and decided how long a man could be gone before he lost his spot. Those rules sounded simple, but they only worked if everyone accepted them. So miners held meetings, voted on district rules, and wrote them down in plain language. They appointed recorders to track claims and chose juries from whoever stood nearby. When a dispute broke out, the crowd became the courtroom. This improvised justice moved quickly, and that speed felt necessary. It also made outcomes unpredictable because popularity sometimes mattered more than proof. As theft and cheating spread, some camps formed vigilance committees to enforce decisions and punish offenders. These groups promised order when no sheriff appeared, but they also concentrated power in a few hands. Accusations turned into arrests, and trials became public tests of force. Whippings, banishment, and even hangings followed. The goldfields gained a kind of order, but it rested on fear and consensus, and it could collapse the moment the crowd changed its mind. By 1850, the gold rush did more than fill riverbeds with miners. It packed California with people faster than the government could count them. A territory built for a thin frontier population suddenly carried the weight of a crowded, arguing, fast-moving society. That pressure forced a decision. California pushed for statehood, not as a distant goal, but as an emergency fix. The old system could not keep up. In 1850, California entered the Union as a state, and the work began immediately. Officials had to build a government almost from scratch while the rush still raged. Courts had to replace camp justice, or at least compete with it. Taxes had to be collected to pay for basic services, even as people tried to stay invisible and mobile. Laws had to be written, enforced, and explained to newcomers who never agreed on rules. Law enforcement tried to turn paper authority into real control. Sheriffs, judges, and local officials faced crimes that grew with every new shipment of people and money. The state needed roads, jails, records, and clear boundaries for who owned what. But institutions moved slowly, and the goldfields moved fast. That gap shaped daily life. Formal government arrived, yet it always seemed one step behind the rush that created it. In the early 1850s, the simplest gold started running out. The shallow gravels and creek beds that once paid off with a pan and a shovel no longer gave up enough to keep a man fed. So miners chased what remained in harder places, buried deeper in the ground or trapped in hillsides. That change sounded like hope, but it demanded something most prospectors did not have: money, equipment, and time. New methods took over, and they cost real capital. Hydraulic mining blasted entire banks apart with high-pressure water, and deep mining meant shafts, pumps, timber, and constant labor just to keep tunnels from flooding or collapsing. A lone miner could not easily do that. Claims turned into projects. Projects turned into businesses. Investors expected returns, and machines did the work that strongbacks once handled. That shift rewrote the promise of the gold rush. Many prospectors faced a hard choice: join a company and take wages, or keep searching and fall behind. Some held on by pooling resources, but more simply ran out of luck. The fields still produced gold, sometimes more than ever, but it no longer flowed to whoever arrived first. It flowed to whoever could organize, finance, and control the ground. By the mid-1850s, the biggest gamble in California was no longer swinging a pick. Gold still mattered, but a steadier kind of money started to win. Every miner needed food, tools, boots, tents, and repairs, and someone had to bring it all in. Merchants stocked shelves, teamsters hauled loads, and shipowners charged for passage and freight. The rush created a constant customer base. Selling to the dream often paid better than chasing it. As mining turned harder and more expensive, the economy shifted around it. Farmers in the valleys grew crops and raised livestock for towns that could not feed themselves. Mills, warehouses, and transport lines tied the interior to the coast, and money began to flow through new hands. Bankers and lenders stepped in to fund shipments, equipment, and payrolls, then collected interest whether the mine paid out or not. Risk moved upward, profit moved toward those who supplied and financed. San Francisco sat at the center of this change. It became the place where cargo arrived, prices were set, and credit was arranged, linking distant camps to global trade. Other hubs grew too, wherever routes met, and goods changed hands. The goldfields still produced the headline, but the real structure formed behind it: accounts, contracts, shipping schedules, and steady farms. California did not stop being a gold country. It became a service and supply machine built to feed the rush long after the easy gold faded. By the late 1850s, California no longer sat off to the side of the country. Gold and the businesses built around it demanded steady movement: people, tools, food, and mail on schedules that could not slip. Shipping lanes multiplied, ports expanded, and coastal steamers tied the mining interior to the Pacific world. Overland roads improved because breakdowns and delays now cost real money. Distance still existed, but it stopped acting like a wall. That push for speed turned into a push for permanence. Investors and politicians chased rail routes that could bind the West to the rest of the United States, not just in months, but in days. Surveyors mapped passes, crews cut grades, and towns along the lines gambled on becoming the next hub. Every mile changed who could compete and who fell behind. California's economy started to pull the whole region into its orbit, and Washington started paying closer attention. But the bill came due. Hillsides blasted apart for mining bled mud into rivers, and farmland downstream suffered when channels filled and floods hit harder. The rush also left deep human damage, displaced native communities, harsher laws against many immigrants, and violence that followed profit. By the 1860s, the lesson looked unavoidable. California had become connected for good. Rich, fast-growing, and strategic. That made it a national engine. It also made it a national battleground. California did not stop being shaped by the gold rush when the last easy flakes disappeared. The rush left behind a habit. People arrived fast, gambled big, and accepted risk as normal. That pattern stayed in the state's bones. Families carried migration stories across generations, and newcomers kept coming, drawn by the same promise. One lucky break could change everything. The gold itself mattered, but the mindset mattered more. California's economy kept turning on the chase for the next strike. First, it ran through new resources like oil, where drilling booms created towns, jobs, and sudden wealth, until prices fell and the work vanished. Later, it ran through new industries that rewarded speed and daring. The cycle repeated: surge, crowding, winners, and hard landings. The contrast looked sharp in the modern era. This once quiet frontier became a densely populated, wealthy state with global influence, and it happened in a remarkably short span of history. The starting point still traced back to 1848, when a discovery in the Sierra foothills pulled the world toward California. The rush turned the place into a magnet, and the pull never fully faded.